In the matter of the people of the state of California versus Orenthal James Simpson, case number BA096.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
We are recording, and we are live and back from a trip and the first holiday out of a series of 2 holidays. I know that, I might as well start with introducing us. Welcome to Doomed to Fail, the podcast where we cover things that were doomed to fail. I cover true crime usually. Taylor covers history, although we kind of mix and match our premise for the show. I'm Farz, joined here by Taylor. Hi, Taylor.
Hello.
I was going to start with something there, and I totally lost my train of thought.
Cool.
Sweet.
Cool. Well, it's good to be back.
Holidays. That's what it was. First round of holidays complete. Second round of holidays about to start up. Taylor and I took a very, very lovely 2 weekends off from recording or editing. Taylor stayed incredibly busy, releasing additional content, old episodes, re-releasing them, as well as putting out content on social media, which has been incredible. So thank you for your contribution there, Taylor.
You're welcome. It took a while to set up. Once it was set up, it just happened on its own, which was very nice.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So, and Taylor and I just got a chance to actually hang out in person. We hung out quite a bit. We were in North Carolina. We were in Asheville together and went to a friend's wedding. Congratulations to our friends Jan and Beth on their nuptials and on their Panama/Colombian vacay that they're on now.
Yeah.
And got to see lovely Biltmore. Took a little road trip out there with Taylor and got to do that, which was really, really fun.
It was awesome. Yeah, we had a great time. I can't believe that was only a week ago. I'm like, what has happened?
So wild.
All this shit just goes by so fast, but we had a really good time. So
yes. And as part of my episode for today, which is kind of part of the theme of the episode today, my trip out after the wedding extended past just North Carolina into Tennessee, which allowed me to visit Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, which, if you don't know, is the home of Dollywood, which is a Dolly Parton resort. I mean, it's like a Dolly-themed resort, basically. Not a resort. It's a Dolly-themed amusement park with 2 resorts that are on site.
Oh my God, fun. Did you stay at one of them?
I did. It was,
nice.
I stayed at, the resorts were named after her albums. And so one of her albums called Heart Song. And so I stayed at the Heart Song Resort, which was brand new, actually. Like, I literally think we were the first people to stay in that hotel room. It opened, I think they said 8 months ago. And you could tell. It was just so perfect, so immaculate.
Nice.
Yeah, it was really, really cool. It was way too expensive, like for what it was.
Sure.
Like,
well, I mean,
they definitely all theme parks.
Yeah, they're all too expensive. Oh, it's cute.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I would say. So I had several thoughts I was going to share here with this. So first things first is when I first got there, I went through stages. First, when I got there, I was like, what are we doing here? Everybody here's like 80 years old. They're all riding in rascal scooters. And they're all but just screaming Donald Trump in your face for no reason. And I was like, I made a terrible mistake. Because now we're here. We booked it for 2 nights. I already bought the tickets to Dollywood and was like, what the hell am I doing? I didn't even like. So here's the thing, I've always known who Dolly Parton was because I was always into country music, but I never liked her music. So I was like, what am I doing here? And the first night there was a blast, had a great time. We're just joking amongst ourselves. We're literally the only people under 75 years old that were hanging out there. And so we just had a good time to ourselves. The next day we went to Dollywood itself. We literally went there before the park opened. It was exactly out of National Lampoon's Family Vacation. We got there and we're like, this feels like Wally World. Like, there's literally nobody here. We got there before opening, and then they let you in ahead of opening, and you can kind of wander around. And I started getting enamored with it. It's like this old country vibe, this old timey vibe. And as the day progressed, more and more younger people came out and started doing their thing. But
it opens at 11. That's late.
Yeah, I thought so too. So
I'm looking that up because I was like, that's weird to get there early, but no, it opens at 11. That feels like.
Yeah, I mean, we woke up, we had breakfast, like, what are we going to do? Like, there's nothing to do. Like, the resort isn't, like, a cool resort.
It's not like summer, but there's a pool, but it's not open, right?
Yeah, you couldn't really use it anyways. And so we got there, like, 10:30, and then like they had this moment where they like did the Pledge of Allegiance, and everybody stops and like starts like looking up at the flag, and I was just like,
Why the fuck not?
what are we doing? Like,
Ugh.
I mean, not do the Pledge of Allegiance, but like, does everybody have to like? It felt kind of culty, and I got that vibe anyways because like the day before we're hanging out at the bar at the resort, and everybody's talking about Dolly. Oh my God, I love Dolly. Dolly's the best person in the world. She's so great. She's so. I was just like, oh my God, you people are driving me insane. She's like a human being. She's not like a symbol of something. But then I started researching Dolly Parton, and it was like, she's actually like a really great person.
Yeah.
Like
No,
she's like great.
she's pretty great. And I think you texted me this, but it just she's definitely not a mega Republican. Like
Mm.
she has that beautiful charity that gives kids books. She invested in the Moderna vaccine. Like she's not
Yeah, yeah. She
she's a
donated
goodie.
for the development of the Moderna COVID vaccine. She
Yeah.
gifts a book every month for every child you want to get read a book to until they're like in first grade or something. I forgot what it was,
Hmm.
but like it's
It's
like
like a
hundreds
beautiful
and
thing that she has. Yeah.
yeah, she's been married to her husband for like 67 years. Like, and then she owns half of Dollywood. So obviously, she's not like a resort maker. She's not like a amusement park maker. So like, she partners with people to do this stuff. And then you
Hmm.
realize like, oh, this whole area is obsessed with this woman because this was nothing. It was like a blown
Yeah.
out nothing town. These people take so much pride in being in Pigeon Forge and being associated with Dolly Parton and the kind of
That
resources she's
totally
pumping in.
makes sense.
It was incredible. I was talking to Rachel about this. While I was saying that I went downstairs one day and I was just gonna get something from the snack bar they had in the resort, and this guy wheels out this giant like cart full of tools and stuff, and he just like puts one dab of paint on like this one part that's like I was like, and me and
Just keeping
Taylor,
it nice.
yeah, like Taylor, you didn't see the hotel we stayed at in Asheville, the Sheraton at 4 Points, but that place was like completely crumbling to the ground and nobody gave a shit. They're like they take so much pride in everything there. It was really cool to see actually.
It looks nice.
And one thing I did there that I usually don't do, but I did it because it's like there's nothing else going on. Was there's it's an amusement park. Dollywood's an amusement park, so like they have all kinds of rides
Hmm.
and like roller coasters, and we went on one roller coaster and it was fun because it was like this slow little windy thing through this old country village. It was like a kids
Hmm.
coaster basically. Like, oh, that was great. Yeah, this is my speed. I was like, I was looking around. Everybody here's on rascal scooters. Like, there's no chance they have like really thrilling rides. So yeah, let's go ride some roller coasters. We get on the next one, and then we sit in this thing, and it's like empty. It's like we're the only ones. Again, it's like opening, and these harnesses come down over us, and we look at each other and we're like, is this gonna go upside down? Like, why else would there be a harness that comes over us? And like a geriatric amusement park, this thing, Taylor, just would do loop after loop after loop. And I was just like, oh, I was just screaming. I had my eyes closed, screaming the entire time. I'm not a roller coaster guy. I can't do roller coasters.
It sounds like you're not a roller coaster guy.
Like, my thing is like, everything is trying to kill you 100 times a day, anyways. So why introduce the variable of a roller coaster? You're trusting a 16-year-old and maintenance workers who you probably wouldn't trust to like watch your house with your life and the most gruesome things that can potentially happen to you. And so that's
Yeah.
what, like always what was running in my mind. Regardless, I ended up riding. Hold on, I wrote it down here. How many did I ride? I rode two roller coasters three times. No, three roller
Oh.
coasters twice, and then three additional roller coasters. But one of them, Taylor, it was called Thunderhead. It was
I'm
a
looking at all of them.
completely um, wooden roller coaster. Talk about scary as shit. You're all the way up on this narrow thing that's being supported by two by
Oh, I see it.
fours.
I
It
love it.
is terrifying. And one thing it did, because it goes like 53 miles per hour. It shoots you down this hill, and like at a 100 foot hill, you go down it. You're going 53 miles per hour. You go into this right turn, and in your mind, you're like, all this wood holding this whole thing together is just going to turn into like toothpicks. Like it is
Hmm.
terrible, and you can feel it shaking too. You can feel it like flexing. The wood's flexing. I was like, how am I? Why did I do this? Like it was just absolute. That one I did not do again.
Well, I used to live next to a Great America Six Flags, and I used to go all the time. Now that I'm older, I need to take like a Dramamine and like get in the spirit, and then I can do it, you know?
Yeah,
Um, but I'm looking at the Thunderhead, and it says that during the spring and fall, there it has a lot of bees.
yeah, and probably a shitload of termites. There's pro- there's probably just Yeah, like it
Dolly
was
Parton's not going
absolutely
to let you
terrifying.
die at her theme park. I feel like, well, Disney would let you go. Dolly Parton wouldn't. So don't
So
worry.
interestingly enough, there was one ride that's right outside of the Thunderhead. It's one of those ones where it lifts you all the way up, and you're in like this like circular
Mm-hmm.
structure, and then it just drops you. You know
Ugh,
what I'm talking about?
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, I'm not riding that one. That's like the one that I will gladly opt out of. What I found out was that that same ride, a duplicate of it, like they produced several of those. Somebody died in it in Orlando, and
Yes, because he was too
yeah.
big.
Well, was that it?
Hmm.
Okay.
I think that was the one. It didn't like close on him properly.
Yeah, yeah. Well, what that Dollywood ended up doing was they ended up shutting down that ride until that investigation ended. Because you're right, again, like they do things in a very, very family safe
Yeah, of
way. But then also like accidents can happen, right? Like shit happens. So that's what
course.
deals.
Did you go to the
So
bird show?
the bird show was closed. It was too cold for the birds,
Mm,
but it is
I love
incredible
bird shows.
when you walk by it. You're just looking at like nature, right? Like there's nothing there. Like
Hmm.
and then you like look up and you're like, oh my god, there's a bald eagle. And then you
Ah,
realize you're in an outside aviary. There's like 50 bald eagles. It was insane. It was
cool.
incredible. It was so cool. So 10/10 recommend. If anybody can make it to Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, it is absolutely worth taking a trip out there. Those people take so much pride in everything they do. It was awesome. So,
Very cool.
but it led me to my topic for today, which I'm diverting from engineering disasters into amusement park disasters because it feels like it's timely. Because that's all I could think about.
After we got to like, oh, it's safe. You're like,
Yeah.
oh, here's a bad thing that happened. Okay, let me tell you what I'm most afraid of.
Okay.
I'm most afraid of getting stuck upside down.
Oh my God.
Is that in your story? That's the thing that like I feel like if you're some people get like it stops in the middle of the loop and you hang upside down for like an hour.
And when you are upside down, even with the momentum on your body, you know you're going up. Like you can feel your body's like pressing downward. And you're like, this restraint is the only thing
Yeah.
keep me alive right now. That is absolutely terrifying.
Yeah.
So, in the course of exploring some of these tragedies that happen in amusement parks, several things became clear. Number one, amusement parks really, really, really hate talking about this stuff. so, so, so getting details is so hard unless it's like a big old massive media. Unless it's the worst possible situation,
Yeah.
it is impossible to get details out of this. My last story, I'm gonna cover three stories. I might cover four. I don't know. I feel iffy about one of them. I'm gonna definitely do three though. The last story I'm gonna do had the most detail because it was the most tragic, the most scary, the most like obviously fucked up. It
Oh
had
my
the
God.
most press coverage, and so like I actually pulled the court transcripts for it, went through
I'm
every
very
detail. It
nervous.
is,
Yeah.
yeah, it is very well documented, and that will point out to you. That last case will point out to you how bad the circumstances of water park or amusement parks reporting injuries to the public, because in the court case, that's the only place you'll go where you can actually get an itemized list of all the issues that occurred on the
Hmm.
ride that I'm going to cover at the very end. So that being
Ah,
said, yeah,
I like
it's
I feel very I have a little bit of a stomach bug, so I might have to leave to throw up. But you just that now I feel even more nervous. Like my stomach hurts from being nervous. So continue.
feel free to
Very
throw up.
excited.
So we're going to start out with one of my first theme park experiences, which is just like yours, actually, Taylor. Six Flags. So
Mhm.
Six Flags. I was raised in Texas, in Dallas, and a city right next to Dallas is Arlington. And Arlington, Texas, is home of the very first Six Flags. It's also the home of the Six Flags HQ. They're headquartered there. They currently operate 27 theme parks across North America, and the Arlington one happens to be their biggest, their best, the one that they spend all their resources on the most. And that is home to a specific roller coaster called the Texas Giant, which opened in 1990.
Wait, can you stop for a second?
Yes.
I just learned this, I think on last podcast or somewhere, that one of the Six Flags was the Confederate flag.
I didn't. I was gonna ask. Like, I didn't know why they call them Six Flags. What
I
is this
just
Six
learned
Flags?
this is what I just learned like recently. They're the Six Flags of the different nations that have governed Texas. I mean, minus the indigenous people who lived there forever before that. So it was Spain, France, Mexico, the Republic of Texas, United States of America, and the Confederate States of America. But they must have replaced that Confederate flag with some.
Yeah, probably a good move. Like, I think they opened up. I think they first started in like the 1960s, and at that time, I guess like having a Confederate flag everywhere was more normal.
Yeah.
So,
Depends, and in
so
Texas. Depends where you are. Continue.
yes. So we're gonna go back to 2013. We're gonna go back to July 19th of 2013. There's this 52-year-old woman. Her name is Rosa Esparza, and she visits the Six Flag Park with her family. She's in tow with her
Hmm.
husband, and she has like four kids, but only two of them are with her in this situation. There are two teenage kids. One's a son, one's a daughter, and the three of them, mom and son and daughter, board the Texas Giant. At the time, the Texas Giant was the biggest roller coaster in the world. It wasn't. I mean, when you look at the stats now, you're like, who cares? Like literally, like the kid ride at Dollywood was more intense on this, but at the time, it was like a big deal.
Hmm.
So, when they rode the Texas Giant, it was actually called the New Texas Giant. All they basically did was just remodel part of it, but they called it the New
Hmm.
Texas Giant. So when you do if you look at this up yourself, you're going to see it called the New Texas Giant. They renovated in 2010. These people visited in 2013.
Okay.
The restraint for this ride was a lap bar that came down from overhead to lock you in place.
So nervous right now.
Taylor, these things freak the shit out of me. So I'm gonna tell you two stories, okay? So
Okay.
one was when I was living in Florida.
Mm.
We went to Universal Studios in Orlando, and there was a line. It was right when the Harry Potter thing universe opened, and there was
Hmm.
a crazy line for the actual Harry Potter ride. We decided let's just go to the Flight of the Hippodrome, some whatever. Like it was like a smaller kids ride, like right next to the bigger adult Harry Potter ride,
Hmm.
and I got in this thing. And the thing came down, and I was like, "This is a slow ride. It's not that big of a deal, anyways." It didn't really click, and they just let it go. Like, and I was like, "Oh, I just don't fit. Like, my body's not gonna fit in this thing."
Or like it's like a 15-year-old and they do that thing where they just go like with their two fingers and they're like,
Yeah,
Shh. Oh,
yeah,
it's good.
exactly.
It's good. I'm like, oh, really? Brad, you think this is good?
Come on, Brad.
You just did this.
So
I'm doing it on a book. I'm showing you what I'm doing, but you know what I mean.
yeah, no, and this thing takes off, and I was like, "Who cares? It's a kid's ride. Like, how bad can it possibly be?" This thing started doing like going like almost like
The
sideways around
sideways, yeah.
itself, and I
It's
was just like, I pushed my feet as hard as I could into the base of this thing to keep myself in position because I was like, nothing was restraining me. I was literally just in there holding myself into
oh my God, I
position.
have to take my sweater off and I'm getting hot. I so a couple things. There's one we went to Legoland a couple of years ago, and there's a picture of Miles and my mother-in-law on one of those, and it's like turning really fast, and she's like they're both laughing, but I'm like she's holding on to him for dear life
Yeah,
because he's going to fall out of this fucking thing. Because Miles is like way too small, and then also another thing, I have a friend named Taylor, and he's 6'8", and sometimes there's things, and they're like you can't go on this
yeah, yeah.
because it's
Uh,
like your head will get chopped
I
off, sir.
so one thing they do at Dollywood, which is great, I haven't seen other theme parks do it. I'm sure they do, but one thing they do is that when you are before you even can enter the queue for the line to get on the ride, they have seats outside, and the seats outside
Good
have lights
idea.
on them. Yeah, so you sit in it, and then you close the restraint, and then if you get a green light, you can go. If you don't, you can't go. And
Oh, that's a
so,
great idea.
yeah,
I
that
used
booted
to
me out of one of the rides, but that was basically it.
Good. Blair and I used to, my sister and I used to stuff our shoes with paper towels to be taller, to be able to ride like the Batman ride and like the bigger rides and like in a Great America. And then by the end of the day, we like couldn't ride them because the paper towels would be smushed because their feet were like soaking wet. You know, I'm just like being there all day.
You are way more of a daredevil than I am.
I can't believe I did that. Now I would go on a couple maybe and then maybe throw up and then maybe be like, I don't know if I want to do it again. So
Yeah, fair enough. Um,
I used to
so
be.
going back to Rosa, she gets in this ride, the New Texas Giant. In theory, she's getting locked into place, this overhead restraint, because this is one of those loop roller coasters.
Hmm.
When when she's on the ride, she mentions to the attendee, the staffer there, that she doesn't think that the thing clicked into place. Like she didn't think it fit right. Witnesses reported that she asked the park employee if she was okay, and basically the employee was like, "Yeah, it's fine as long as you heard a click, we're fine." Witnesses noted that everyone else's restraint clicked a bunch. It would go like, like do that thing, and
Hmm.
they were saying like, "Oh, they noticed it was noticeable enough that hers went click," and that was basically it.
I can't feel my arms.
So,
I had to like stand up and put a fan on. I'm gonna like put my head between my legs. Keep going. I'm so nervous.
so I mean, everybody knows this, but basically, like with a chain lift roller coaster, like now they have maglev ones and all that stuff. But with a chain lift one, you basically the ride starts by pulling the train and the cars up this giant hill. And then when you
Hmm.
get to the top, it'll release, and then you basically have all the momentum to go down and drop. And in this case, the drop is 153 feet, which is like it's okay. Like now, there's a thing called giga coasters, which are 300 foot drops, and there's also a thing called strata coasters, which are 400-foot drops. But this was 150, so still.
Okay.
Um,
Go ahead.
Basically, what people reported was as soon as a car goes up and crests and starts falling, Rosa flies 70 feet away from the coaster, and nobody knows what happened to her.
Oh
Her
my God.
kids see this,
And they're still on it.
and they have to be on it. The ride lasts, I think it was like 3 minutes and 20 seconds. They still have to sit on this ride while they saw their mom flying 70 feet, 153 feet down to the ground, which is like bad, really bad.
Oh
So
God.
the kids go through this, and the second the ride stops, they hop out, they start running and screaming, they try to go into the restricted area, they get pulled back, the police are notified, they start doing a search, trying to figure out what happened to this woman, and it took hours to figure out what happened, but she ended up landing on the roof that's like adjacent to the queue area where people were standing in line to get on the Texas Giant.
And no one
And
like heard it?
I guess nobody heard it. I don't know. Or maybe like
I
I
mean,
don't know.
it's loud. Maybe when
Yeah,
it's
it's
like
loud. And would you ever assume it's a body falling on you? Like,
no, but I mean, I feel like you'd see her like outline. Was it? I don't know. I don't know. It's crazy
yeah.
that no one saw it or heard it.
What they say is that based on how they found her body and the amount of force with which she would have hit that roof, she would have died instantly. They
Oh,
just
good.
immediately died.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank God for that at least. So they launched an investigation. Six Flags blames the manufacturer. The manufacturer blames Six Flags. The family sues the shit out of both of them. They end up settling for an undisclosed sum. Some say it was like about $1 million, which seems like crazy light. And Six Flags ultimately never accepts responsibility for Rosa's death. What they ended up doing though was they added a seatbelt to every one of their roller coasters. So now you are no longer only restrained by the top thing. You're also restrained with like a seatbelt.
Oh my
And they
God.
added to every single one of their coasters across their entire park network. It's worth noting that Six Flags' point on this was that all this stuff about clicking, their take on it was that's not possible. All of our rides had this like magnetic thing going on inside them where what's actually holding you in place is like a switch that is flipped when you're
Hmm.
in the initial waiting area, and that's what locks everything in place. Their point was you wouldn't have heard a click. I didn't go into research on this, but I'm sure I could find it pretty easily if I asked like people like, "Hey, have you been on the new Texas Giant? Was there a click?" Like to see who's lying and who's not. At the end of the
Right.
day, she's gone, and her kids had to watch her fall to her horrible, horrible death 10 years
Oh
ago.
my God, that's horrifying. Well, I guess so. Wait, so what do you mean? So the click is like superficial?
Well, what Six Flags is actually saying is they couldn't have heard a click anyways. Like that's not even a possibility given how the safety restraint is supposed to work. So
Hmm.
that's their point. Their point is that this was like a manufacturer error with like a faulty design defect, and had nothing to do with maintenance or anything else.
It's saying that her body was nearly severed in half.
It was, yeah, yeah. She hit the thing with. I mean, it's a lot of force.
Oh my God, poor lady.
Not good.
No.
Yeah, I read that like she came over from some part of Mexico to like get her kids a better life, and like she almost sawed in half by getting flung out of a roller coaster. This is why like I've been in situations before where like my parents like they're not at all risk takers. I've been like, come on, let's do it. Just don't do it. Like you're people know what's good for their body, especially when you're 52 years old. Like just
Yeah, like you're already you would have done it earlier. It's like me and like I'm never gonna learn how to ski because I didn't learn how to ski when I was like 10, so it's over
yeah.
for me. You know, you can't
I've been
learn to ski when you're 41. You'll die.
I've been asked if I want to go on scuba trips before or like learn to scuba. I'm like, fuck that. It's like it's
No,
just it passed me.
you're
There's
way
a
past that.
lot of other ways I can die. I don't need that to
Hmm.
be added to it. So
100%. I don't want to lose you in an underwater cave. Be like,
so
ugh.
scary. So we're gonna
Man,
go from that
that's
story
horrible.
to Ohio. But before that, we're gonna take a quick commercial break and be right back.
This week's episode of Doomed to Fail is brought to you by Naughty Studio. Are you looking for some holiday merch for a friend's gift exchange? A fun gift for a sibling Secret Santa? Check out the collection of inappropriate holiday sweaters and gifts from Naughty Studio. We definitely don't recommend them for a work party, but we do recommend them for a family party where you'd like to make someone uncomfortable and also take a few minutes to yell about free speech, because this is America. Find Naughty Studio, that's Nautee Studio, on Instagram and Etsy. Use the promo code Let's Do This for 15% off your order. That's Naughty Studio. We'll put the link in our show notes. And happy holidays from us. Thanks.
We're going to go to a place called Kings Island, which is an amusement park in Ohio. And a little bit of background on this. So this park was originally called Coney Island, which is kind of interesting. It was on the banks of the Ohio River, and it was basically just a small little, it looked like a county fair type of a thing. And it started in 1964, and the issue they were having was that every single time it would get rainy in Ohio, the Ohio River floods, it washes away half the park, and they have to rebuild it. So like, fuck this, we're not going to do this anymore. Let's go more inland. So they built this park a little north of Cincinnati, essentially, which ended up actually resembling more of what we currently look at as an amusement park. What's worth noting is that our cultural fascination or interest in roller coasters started with this park. This park was the first one to introduce like more thrill rides, and as opposed to like campground fair, amusement park, or county fair type rides. And one ride that's going to come in later on this story is called the Racer. And that was kind of the original impetus for revitalizing America's love and interest and fascination with roller coasters. So that's fun. As part of one of the themes within this park, they had a 1/3 scale replica of the Eiffel Tower. Still big. And a 1/3 replica of an Eiffel Tower is still pretty huge. It's about 300 feet. And it was kind of stationed near the entryway of the park. I pulled up maps of this thing. It's really meant to be like, it's kind of like how the golf ball is the centerpiece of Epcot. The Eiffel Tower is the centerpiece of Kings Island, essentially.
Okay. Why?
I don't know. I never got a sense of why they decided to build and they did two of them. Later on, they also created another Eiffel Tower at what's called King's Court. There's another theme park somewhere that this company also launched. They also put the Eiffel Tower there. It's actually really popular, apparently. Like, it's still functional, it's still operational and everything.
All right.
So more power to them. It kind of functions as a little bit of a ride, sort of. So basically, it's like the Eiffel Tower, right? The Eiffel Tower is just a bunch of steel trusses, and in the middle of it, there's an elevator. And the point of the elevator is to take you all the way to the top. You get out. There's an observation deck. I looked at YouTube videos of this. It looks actually really, really cool. You get this amazing 360 view of like the area and the park itself, which is really awesome, and especially because you're looking at all these massive roller coasters that you're now taller than. So this story happens in May of 1983. Kings Island would host a grad night, which is a night for teens who are graduating from the area to come to the park. They get discount tickets. They get premium, line cutting, all that stuff. And so it's like a night for the grads. Like, just enjoy your night with your friends before you all go off and have your lives destroyed by college loans. And so
It's exactly what it is.
And so on this night, there's a 17-year-old guy named John Harter. He was there with his girlfriend Pam and a group of their friends, and they were all basically there to have a good time. Long story short was that they drank a lot. Well, we don't know if they all drank a lot. We know that John drank a shitload. He got into fights with his girlfriend and stuff. Like, it sounded a lot like more of my tumultuous relationships. But what was noted was that Ohio state law was very lax when it came to like underage drinking, and so it is presumed that he was drunk as shit when he got to the park, and he kept drinking when he was at the park. Not great. So the group got on their first ride, which was called the Racer. And that's a roller coaster ride, and that's the one that I mentioned. It was actually featured in the Brady Bunch sitcom at one point. They all went to a theme park and they rode the Racer. It's the one that ignited our fascination with roller coasters. But they get off this ride and they end up kind of regrouping with each other a little bit down the road and trying to figure out what they're going to do next. John was not with them in this group. We're going to segue from the experience of their friends now to the experience of what John was actually doing when he got off Racer. So if you look at a map, Racer is kind of the first ride off the left when you get to this theme park, and then directly next to it is this Eiffel Tower observation thing.
Okay.
So the Eiffel Tower has two observation platforms. One is 50 feet, and the other is 275 feet up. And usually what you do is you get in the line, you get on this elevator, the elevator takes you up, you can get off of the 50-foot mark, you get up at the 275 mark, and then you do your thing, and then the elevator takes you all back down. So that's the point of it. But the other thing it has is a flight of stairs. So there's a flight of stairs that takes you almost to the very top, but to get to the very top, you need to have like special access and all that.
It
So
makes sense you'd have to be able to walk down in case of an emergency.
yeah, exactly. So what John was trying to do was get to the very top, but without riding the elevator. So what he did was, being drunk, he walked up this elevator or the stairs up the Eiffel Tower. He gets close to 270 feet up high and can't go any further. He then crosses over to the railing. He crosses over the railing, and he starts shimmying across these I-beams. Because again, it's like the Eiffel Tower. It's just a bunch of scaffolding holding this shit together. He shimmies to the center of this Eiffel Tower, stares down into the nearly 300-foot void below him. Kids, like, just drink at home. Just drink. No, get
Like,
drunk.
I understand wanting to drink at a theme park, 100%. But you're going to throw up at the very best.
At the very best.
Yes.
Very worst, this is what's going to happen to you. So what ended up happening was the ride was still operational. So as John's leaning over, staring into this void, what he doesn't realize is that he's in the fucking elevator shaft.
Oh no.
So what happens is,
no.
you know, the way elevators work, obviously, is that you have to have a counterweight, right? So when the elevator's going up, the counterweight's going down, goes down, the elevator goes down. That's the operational function of it. And so what John's not seeing is, as the elevator's going up, the thing is coming down. The counterweight is coming down. The counterweight smacks him. He lands on the top of the elevator, and like people hear the sound, like, that's weird. I wonder what that was. Goes all the way to the top, impaling him on exposed metal wires and rebar at the top of this thing.
No.
And so he's like semi-alive.
No.
Yeah, and then
John.
and then they end up going down all the way, and he was impaled on the rebar enough to where his body didn't exit with the elevator when it went down. And so as the elevator's going down, he ends up, somehow his body slips out from all the fucking blood that's probably pouring out of him, and he lands on top of this thing. And they're like, that's weird. That's never happened before. None of the stories tell you this, and it's hard to get details because it's 1983 and they were not that fascinated with gore. I can only assume there was just pools of blood falling from the roof on top of these people, which would be like the most metal way to go ever.
Oh my God.
Because that's ultimately how they discovered that John was on the roof of the fucking thing. He'd fallen after being impaled on rebar all the way back
And then he was
down.
like up and then like back down. Oh my God.
Meanwhile, the friends have been searching for John this whole time, and the police are there on the scene, and they're like, "We don't know who this is. He's 17 years old. He has no ID. We have no idea who this kid is." The park starts shutting down. The kids go tell staff that their friend's been missing. The police eventually connect the dots and realize that, oh, this is what ended up happening to this guy. He ended up this is the same guy, and so that was it. 17 years old, dead and buried. Yeah.
That's awful.
Went straight into the ground. Not good.
Well, when you're a teenager, you do so many stupid things. Like there's so many times where I could have died and I didn't die. And it's just fucking luck that I'm not dead.
Seriously. I think about the shit that I did when I was a kid, or like a teenager, and I'm like, I shake thinking about how reckless I was.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's crazy.
Totally. I
remember one time when I was in college, my friend at the time, we were in the same dorm. He was like, hey, let's use the fire escape to climb up to the roof of the building and like drink on the roof of this building.
Sounds like a good idea.
And I was like, yeah, let's do it. And then I got like halfway. I was like, oh my God, this is for emergencies. Like there's nothing underneath me. There's nothing hold. If I let go, there's no backup. Like nobody's coming to save me. It was the worst. But it's stuff like that. I've just done so many of those things.
Yeah, so stupid.
So On to
Ugh.
our third and final story. I'm gonna skip the other one. It happened in China. It sounded pretty gnarly, but like again, it's China. Like it's hard to get the information. It's hard to get the details out of this stuff. And so it's just like
Yeah.
if I don't have enough details to make it fun and interesting, I'm just not gonna go through it. There was actually another one that I also thought about covering that I didn't cover. That one I'll just tell you real quick. So this happened in Disney, and this girl's name was Deborah Stone. I think she was 18 years old. It was one of her first jobs, and she was basically a host on America Sings, which is this ride sort of where the audience sits in one spot, and then there's a rotating stage. So on one stage, as you're looking at they're singing this, they're doing this one performance, while
Hmm.
they're doing a different performance on the stage over to you, and a different performance on the other stage, and there's audiences at each one of the stages. Then the whole thing shifts, puts you in front of the new audience, and then you start singing and doing your thing again. Deborah
Sure.
was supposed to be introducing people and doing all that, so I'm kind of sitting off to the side. Apparently, what she ended up doing was her hair or something got caught
Oh.
in like some of the machinery, and she ended up being pulled in between this rotating stage as it was rotating and just being crushed. And what people could hear was every single time the thing would rotate, they would just hear screams, and they hours later they realized that it was Deborah in between there. But this happened like the 1950s, so like the details are sparse. Like that's all we really know. There's
Poor
no
Deborah.
yeah, no other fun gory details. But this one has plenty of gory details, which is very terrible. This ride, I'm sure most of you all heard this story. This ride is called Verrückt, and it was operated by Schlitterbahn, which is a water park theme park that was
Hmm.
based out of New Braunfels, Texas, that expanded into other states and territories. So
Hmm.
this also took place at the site of our horrific Hyatt disaster, Kansas City, Missouri. So I don't know what's haunting Kansas City, but yeah,
And
nightmarish history.
Farouk, are you gonna talk about what that means?
I was literally going to ask you if you knew what it means because you surprise me sometimes.
I do. I looked it up again because I wanted to make sure I was right, but it made the word made me scared. It means despicable, loathsome, like bad, very bad.
Okay, so the version that I read was that it means crazy or
Yeah,
insane.
that makes sense.
Yep. So in 2014, Schlitterbahn opened this ride called Verrückt, which is a giant water slide. And on its opening day, they got the distinction of being the tallest and fastest water slide in the world. The Guinness Book of World Records
Hmm.
showed up. They had a whole festival about it. It was a big deal. The initial drop on this water slide is 168 feet tall, which for a roller coaster isn't that big of a deal, but for a water slide, a lot more random elements that you can't really control. This is a 17-story drop, is what it basically amounts to.
Right. That's helpful because I don't really know like the feats of
Right,
things,
right.
So that's helpful. Thank you.
Yes. The way the ride works was riders who would start at the very base, and all this is bad. So riders would start at the base, and they would be weighed, and so they would put riders because they had to meet a minimum weight threshold. The raft without riders, or sorry, the raft with riders had to weigh a minimum of 400 pounds. The maximum it could possibly weigh was 550. You'll know why in a little bit later. So what they would do is they would weigh everyone, and they'd say, okay, you're 100 pounds, you're 200, that guy's 100, y'all are together. Y'all ride together, basically. That's the
Got
idea.
it.
Then you walk 17 stories up to get loaded onto this raft and then go through the ride. So what ends up happening is the way the ride is designed is that when you get dropped, you start going downhill. You do the 17-story drop, which looks crazy steep. Like it doesn't look like a gradient at all. Then the ride curves up and it's pushed up a second hill, mostly by momentum, but also through like these water jet propulsion systems underneath in the slide.
Hmm.
And then it's supposed to go down a second smaller descent. Then it lands in this like water filled area where it's supposed to be like a breaker to slow down the slide and get you stopped. There's a problem with the slide. The problem, well, there's a lot of problems with the slide. But one of the bigger, more obvious problems was that on this second ascent over the hill, every now and then there was a tendency for these rafts to go airborne, which you don't want at all.
Hmm. Hmm.
So it is around. So also, one of the things that they were trying to do to kind of slow down the amount of people that were going airborne was they designed what are called brake mats. So these are just like mats that are installed on the slide There's friction that causes when the raft goes over it. It's supposed to slow the raft down so that you don't go airborne. Some of these were installed, some of these were not, but it was part of the initial design.
It's just like that is God telling you not to make them this tall.
Yeah, yeah. There's so
You
much.
know?
I'm going to tell you so many things about that, Taylor. Like that was a
Okay.
big part of this. So during the main descent and second hill part of the ride, there was a net that was suspended over riders, and it was
Hmm.
fastened to the slide with loops. So there's a loop
Hmm.
that's to the slide, and then there's a net above you. On August 7th, 2016, a 10-year-old boy named Caleb Schwab and two sisters named Matraka Bates and Hannah Barnes got into what is going to be referred to in court documents as Raft B at Verrucht. And
Okay.
they went down and they crested the second hill, and the raft became airborne. We're going to talk about weight. People don't like to talk about weight. I'm going to talk about weight. Caleb
This
weighed
is
70
this is math weight. This isn't like
math
weight
weight.
shaming weight. This is math weight.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Caleb, the position of the individuals and their individual weights is super, super relevant to this. So
Hmm.
Caleb was in the very front. So he was the first one in the raft. He weighed 74 pounds, 10-year-old boy. One of the women, Matraka, weighed 275 pounds.
Hmm.
The other woman, Hannah, weighed 197 pounds.
Okay.
So what that essentially means, if you have what's his face, Caleb in the front, it means you have 472 pounds on the back of this thing with 74 pounds on the front. That gives you a weight distribution of 87 to 13. Really
Okay.
bad, super
Yeah.
janky, like really not a
Hmm.
good evenly distributed weight situation.
Right. Because it
So
doesn't matter. Like it matters like how much they weigh combined, but it also matters like you can't have like a 499-pound person and a 1 pound person. Like
yeah,
that's not gonna work.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So the ride goes up the second hill, and Caleb's head was, or his body was forced upward because you have 472 pounds of drag on the back of this thing. So like imagine that, like it's going up, and then it just basically does this. You can't, nobody can
Hmm.
see my hands when I'm making hand motions, Taylor.
I wish you could see the frown. I was making the biggest frown I could possibly make because I'm so
Very
sad.
big frown, very pronounced. Caleb's neck makes
Mhm.
contact with one of those metal hoops at 70 miles per hour, which immediately decapitates him.
I mean, I feel like if you hit that, oh my God. If like, how can that be safe? How can hitting that net be safe? Or those loops be safe at that fast anyway?
It's
I mean, is it
it's
not?
almost indicative of somebody who has no engineering background, which is a big part of why what happened, what ended up happening.
Oh my God.
Uh, in addition to this decapitation, one of the women in the raft suffered a broken jaw. The other one had broken orbital bones in her face.
Hmm.
I can't even imagine what this scene looked like if you're one of these two women in the back of this thing. What does
Yeah.
that even look like? Like
Nope.
you're on a raft with a decapitated child.
Did they know
God
him? They
knows
knew him, right?
they didn't know him.
They didn't know him?
It doesn't matter. It's still a decapitated child whether you know him or
I'm
not.
I'm
Like
I'm aware. I know, but I mean, oh my God.
and then I was just doing the math. I was like, where did his head like does his head land in your lap? Does it land on the lap of the girl behind you? And then you're writing down with this thing. There's not videos obviously. Well, actually there is a video, but it's never been released publicly.
Yeah, no.
There is images of way after this happened. So like 5, 7, 10, 8 minutes after this happened, because there's police on site, and like that's not gonna happen super quick. And there's still blood everywhere. And this is like
Yeah.
this is like a water slide, so it's constantly rushing water, but there's still streams of blood all over this thing because you just squirted out like 10 ounces of blood or whatever, how much a 10-year-old boy has. So horrible situation. What's really interesting is also this guy's dad was a state representative for Ohio, and that
Hmm.
becomes critical later as well. So several things are off here. So the weight distribution was obviously entirely off. Like what they should have done, if they were going to do this right at all, which nobody should have, was put the kid in the middle. Put him in the middle.
Yeah.
Like the two will balance, will like mostly even each other out, and then he's just kind of in the middle doing his thing.
And like you could hold on to them. Like we went to the water park in New York this summer, and Miles is very, very small. He is, and we were on one where he was like definitely too small to be on, but it was like a small thing. We went through a tube. We were in like a double person tube, and he was below me holding onto my feet, and I was like, "You hold on to my feet for fucking life, Miles." And he just hold my feet and hold on to his like his little shoulders, and I was like, "Oh my God!" Like, it was very, very scary. So
Instilling trust young. I like it.
yeah, yeah.
Um, the other one is that Caleb probably shouldn't have been on the ride in the first place. So when this thing was in its design and planning stages, the people who actually designed this were not engineers, but they would consult with engineers every now and then. And one thing engineers told the owners of the water park and the designer of the slide was that there should be an age limitation on this. And the age limitation they gave him was 16. Nobody under
Wow.
16 should ride this slide.
Hmm.
And then the owner originally said, I don't agree with that. I'm going to set it to 14. And then
Jesus.
when the slide opened, he removed all limitations
What an
completely. There
asshole.
was no age limitations. The other one was what I mentioned earlier. Brake masts that should have been installed in the slide were not installed, and they would have, in theory, slowed the slide down so that it could have prevented going airborne.
Hmm.
The
Ugh.
other, which is insane, is at the time, Missouri state law allowed water parks to self-inspect and self-certify that their attractions were safe, which is like obviously a
What?
horrible idea.
Oh my God.
It's the most obviously transparently horrible idea I've ever heard. So, as you can imagine, there's a ton of criminal and civil suits that end up following after this. The owner of Schlitterbahn, the owner of this water park, he was also the contractor. He also owned the construction business
What a
that
piece of shit.
built and designed the Verrucht. And obviously,
Hmm.
he came under severe scrutiny. There's a lot behind the scenes here, and I've watched a lot of content around this, but it's really convoluted. So I'm just going to give you like the top level overview of it because you'd bore yourself to death if I give you every detail. The long and short of it was that in 2012 or so, the Travel Channel had this program called Extreme Parks.
Hmm.
And they would go around, they'd review like the craziest rides and all that stuff. This guy, his name is Jeff Henry, he's the owner and the designer. He wants to be on extreme parks. In his mind, he's like, the way to do this is to have the most extreme parks. So he goes to Travel Channel and says, hey, I have an idea for a water slide, 17 stories high, never been done before. No engineer will ever certify it. We do an episode on this. They're like, yes, build in, will come. And so that was the impetus for this thing. So
Ugh.
yeah, so they said they would do it, and so now this guy's thinking, oh shit, now I have to build this thing. So it's worth noting Jeff had a high school diploma, zero engineering experience. But once the Travel Channel expressed interest in this, he basically started getting to work trying to build this thing out. And so again, super convoluted story, but the design phase of the slide was 36 days. So what they
Oh my God.
did was they built a scale version of this slide at the Texas version of the water park that he owned, and they would test there. And you can see videos of this. You can see videos of this thing going airborne and just flipping left and right. They load it up with 700-pound sandbags. The thing would go flying. Like basically, what I think what it said was they tested it with humans 4 times. Like Jeff Henry himself rode down it 4 times. 4 times it didn't go airborne, and it stayed working as they wanted it to. And they were like, "That's it. That's good enough. We're ready to go." That's when they started breaking ground on building the actual one on site in Kansas City. Originally, when the Travel Channel said they would do this, Jeff Henry set a timeline of 7 months. He wanted to have this thing tested, designed, tested, built, released in 7 months, which is insane to think about. In the court filing in the criminal case, his accomplice in designing this thing was a guy named John Schooley. He was quoted as saying, quote, if we actually knew how to do this and it could be done that easily, it wouldn't be that spectacular. So they were legit trial and erroring things. They're just testing stuff out and throwing it at the wall and seeing what would stick and what wouldn't stick.
I mean, it's like if you were a child and you were like, what do you think we should do for a water slide? And be like, make it taller.
Yeah,
You know, like
literally.
that's what it is. It's like a drawing of like a one big loop in a thing. Like that'd be perfect. Like it's obviously there are no engineers involved or very
Well,
few.
obviously,
Yeah.
yeah. And one thing to note is that when they started building this thing and testing this thing out, they realized that their designs were flawed at the full scale level, and so they would have to keep trying to increase the gradient to slow down the velocity at which you go up that second hill, so people would stop flying off and potentially getting hurt. The problem was this thing got so
Oh
much
boy.
media attention that they didn't want to show that the thing was faulty. And so, because there's always people there trying to film it. And so what they would do is they would do all their testing and the revisions of the slide at night times or in the early morning
That is
hours.
so fucked up.
Yeah, yeah, they didn't want people to know that they didn't really know what they were doing.
They so like there's I mean, if I were a lawyer, I'd be like, they
Oh my
knew this was
God.
fucking dangerous.
Of course,
Yeah.
absolutely. So the slide itself was actually only operational for 182 days, despite the fact that it was around for 2 years, because the thing kept having to get shut down, getting revised, and also it's a water park, so like most half the year at least, it's shut down anyways. It was operational for 182 days until Caleb went on it and ended up dying. Again, I went through the court records. Here are the things that nobody would have ever known. If Caleb hadn't died, none of this information would have gone out. So there was two people that suffered concussions on this thing. There was one person who suffered a slipped spinal disc. There's two folks who hurt their neck in ways that were not entirely obvious on the court documents. Somebody
Mm-hmm.
got whiplash. There was abrasions and bruising to the head. There was somebody that reported broken toes. This happened because the restraints on the slide or the raft failed, and the guy had to do what I had to do for that Harry Potter ride, which is force his feet into the thing so
Oh my
he could hold himself in
God.
position. But at the very end of this slide, there's a concrete wall,
Oh
and so this guy slammed into this concrete wall, breaking his feet.
my God,
So
just throw up.
you have head lacerations, other foot injuries, you have herniated spinal disc, and then you have the broken jaw, the orbital fracture, and the decapitation.
Oh my
So
God.
yeah, this is all within 182 days. Like it's a crazy error rate. It's a super
Yeah.
high error rate.
Oh my God.
So ultimately, Caleb's family won a $20 million settlement against Schlitterbahn, and Jeff was arrested on criminal charges. But they eventually dismissed the criminal charges because prosecutors were trying to present evidence that they were trying to show the Travel Channel show as like factual when they filmed it for Baruch, and they're like, yeah, this isn't the standard we want to follow. Basically, the court case, the criminal case against them, ended up getting dropped entirely. Caleb's father, as a state representative, went and argued for legislation that removed
Mm-hmm.
this self-reporting and self-certification concept, which is great. Like
Yeah,
that should have happened.
that should have happened.
Yeah, and they ended up selling a big chunk of Schlitterbahn. All the parks that ended up getting sold out, except for this one, because this was a giant liability situation. Baruch ended up getting knocked down anyways. Doesn't really matter. But Jeff continued to prove what an absolute fucking worthless piece of shit he was. He
Oh
ended
my
up getting
God.
arrested last year. Last year, he got arrested on possession of meth, and he just looks. Does he just look? If you've seen a picture,
I'm
it's
gonna
like
look him up.
okay,
I didn't look him up, but I hate him.
fine. Show me someone who just makes and sells meth and also designs insane water slides. It's like this is the guy.
Yep. Oh my God, what a piece of shit.
Yeah, yeah. He ended up getting 36 months of probation, unfortunately. So he's out and about. And I looked him up on LinkedIn, and he still says that his title now is principal at Schlitterbahn. I have no idea what that means. A part of me, Taylor, was like, should I reach out to this guy and be like, hey, can I interview you? Be like, what does he say? I don't know.
Oh
Maybe
my
he'll
God.
bite. Could be fun.
Oh my God.
So, so yeah,
That's
that.
awful.
But the thing, no. So the court case that documented all this stuff. So like that's what I'm saying. Like these folks really don't want you to know anything that goes on. It all gets settled hush hush, right? It's like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
you have a herniated disc. We'll pay your medical expenses. Also, here's like $50,000 cash. Just go. Just we don't need to talk about this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so all these rides that you ride, like sure you haven't heard of anything bad happening on them. That doesn't mean something bad hasn't happened on them. You will never know until a 10-year-old kid is decapitated and then the court case digs up all the records and proves what ended up
Uh-huh.
happening. So
200%. Ugh.
anyways, have fun next summer at your amusement parks.
I know, I feel terrible. That is so sad. I'm so
Yeah,
sad for that poor boy.
God, and those
Poor
girls,
boy.
Jesus,
Oh,
can you
those poor
imagine?
women. No. I mean, I feel like the biggest thing is all the fucking therapy you have to do for the rest of your whole entire life, and you're never going to sleep again. So that
Yeah,
sucks, you know?
I read that one of the women gave an interview, and for the life of me, I couldn't find it. I dug, and I could not find where her interview lived. But if anybody knows, let us know because that would be amazing to see.
Poor thing.
So yeah, that's my
Horrible.
story for today. Um, Hopefully y'all enjoyed it.
I feel like I'm gonna throw up.
Taylor, what I was gonna do originally was I was gonna like do the history of roller coasters and then talk about like the scariest roller coasters and then talk about like a few incidences with them. And then when I started digging into this, I was like, that is so fucking boring. Like just talk about the death.
That's fair. I mean, I'd like to hear about the history of them sometime. Maybe
You ever
I'll do
seen
that.
you ever seen the sketch of the suicide coaster where it's supposed to kill the occupant?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's fun.
Yeah. Like, the idea is that it goes so fast that you die, but you don't like really realize it, and you just like
Pass
loving
out.
pass out. I mean, I feel like just I don't know, just calmer ways to go.
There was one roller coaster at Dollywood. It was called Flying Eagle or Eagle something. I don't know what it was, but it was so outlandish. It was the central track, and then your legs are suspended, and it's off the side. So like above you and below you, there's nothing, and all you can really see is the sky and the ground, and it just does a loop after loop after loop. At one point, it says in the entryway that you will experience 4.5 G's, which means like
Mm-hmm.
someone like me would weigh like for a brief instance like 1,200 pounds, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
pretty sure I actually blacked out. Like there was one point when I just kind of like looked around and was like there was spit all over myself, and I was like, oh, I just blacked out.
I wish you had a video of that. I do enjoy watching videos of people on roller coasters when they pass out.
Yeah,
And then it's like their
exactly.
bodies are just like come back.
Contorting.
Yes. Which is
Um,
horrifying. Why would you do that? Yeah.
Yeah, if you're a
Wow.
thrill seeker, definitely ride that one because that was like outlandishly terrifying.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
So that's it. That's our story. Is there anything,
I
any emails we want to read or
have a couple things that I wanted to share with you. One is from me, you know. Um, I feel like when we got back from vacation, everyone was talking about the documentary on Max about Love Has Won. Did you watch it yet? That
nope?
cult. So it's
Oh
like
no, no.
the cult where this like woman obviously like thinks she's God, and like it's like so dumb. She thinks she's God and has like a couple followers, and they just like really believe it, and they believe that she like is guided by all these like famous dead celebrities, like mostly Robin Williams. And like
Aw.
and then she also, I mean, there's like a whole bunch of people that guided her. Um, and then one of them is Donald Trump, even though he's not dead. And you're like, okay, that's weird. And then there's like a little bit of like, there's a little bit of weird racism that you're like, oh, okay, there it is, you know. But she obviously was like, and then she was like selling this like colloidal silver stuff. Not colloidal, but you know what I mean, like the like silver that you drink that turns you blue. And she like turned blue, and she ended up dying. And like they kept her body for a few days, like in their place because they expected her to come back a lot of things. But she was like one of those people who was like, "Oh, I'm reincarnated," but I was like all the great people. She said that she was like Cleopatra and Marilyn Monroe, because of course everybody says that. Blah blah blah. But I wanted to tell you that at one point in the documentary, they go to Hawaii, and she decides that she's the reincarnation, and she's also like the volcano goddess Pele.
Oh wow.
And they kick her the fuck out of Hawaii. Every people go to her around the house and they're like, "Get out of here! How dare you!" And they don't even they don't even get to stay there very long at all. It's amazing because the Hawaiian people are like, "Fuck you so hard. You're not our goddess. Get out of here."
Yeah, that's like one of the things I will say that like being like from a culture that just doesn't tolerate nonsense, which like
Yeah,
is also like the Polynesian way as well.
I love it.
Is
Yeah,
it's like here it's like I am this thing and you have to look at it and then you're like it's like no, get the fuck out of here. Like
yeah.
who do you think you are? Just shoot,
They're
get
like,
out of here.
leave immediately. So that
It's
was lovely.
awesome.
I enjoyed that. Kicking her out. And then we also have some mail. So we have Brad emailed us a couple
Is
things.
this a thing?
Well, one about the farts, because they are definitely in that one re-release, and I heard them and I laughed so hard. And then because I listened to it on the plane, and then Brad emailed us about it. So we know that in one of our re-releases, there were fart sounds.
That came off Taylor's microphone.
Did not.
We'll never know.
We'll never
Taylor, on the
know.
wait on the drive home before you go into that on the flight home from Asheville, I was in the left seat, Rachel was in the middle, and there was someone on the right. And I swear to God, this guy had to be ripping it every like 10 minutes to the point where the stewardess came by to do like cart service. And I was like, hey, someone in this area is like ripping ass every 10 minutes. Do you have any other seats you can put us in? And she was like, the flight's totally booked. I'm so sorry. And she was like, can I bring you a garbage bag to vomit in? And I was like, no, I'm okay. Let's not, I don't need the garbage bag. And then they didn't charge us for wine, and they're like,
Oh,
"Here,
so
just take it." I was like, "Okay, it's not worth it," but still. Anyways,
oh my God, that's so funny. So anyway, we know that happened. Anybody heard that? That's very funny. And then Brad also emailed us about IQ tests. Because he listened to the one about IQ tests as well. Did you read that email from him? Um,
no.
Basically, he said we talked about wondering how IQ is scored, and he said, far as you have the gist of it, that it should be determined from standardized testing interpreted by a PsyD or a PhD psychologist. The most common IQ test, especially in America, is the Wechsler Adult Intelligence Scale. In what it measures is like a huge can of worms, and it can mean a bunch of different things. It correlates closely to socioeconomic status, obviously, because people like learn different things via their culture norms and via the way that questions are worded. And you can also like take it over and over again and get better at it. So it's sort of up in the air about what it actually means, you know?
It's fair. It's
Yeah.
fair. It's a good point.
hmm hmm
Thanks, Brad. Brad,
Yeah.
we will. If y'all really want more fart episodes, we'll just do more fart episodes. That's the only
I
choice we
guess
got.
we could. Cool. Well, that's it. Thank you, Farz. Thanks, everyone. I'm glad to be back. We are at doomtofailpod@gmail.com, doomtofailpod on all social media. Please tell your friends. Please rate us on Apple Podcasts if you haven't. As a Christmas present to us, it'd be lovely if you
We'd
shared.
appreciate it. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye, all.
Bye.